And our next speaker will be Deborah Whitman from Stanford. She's a really nice person, and she's responsible for the graduate business school in Stanford. And okay, I'm really glad to have her. Thanks for being here.
Delighted to. So I'm with the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where I run the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies. And our mission today is in 12 minutes to talk about some of the best practices about developing deep, rich customer insights. So I'm of the opinion that really successful early stage entrepreneurs and really great product managers, by the way, have developed a superpower of understanding customer needs and customer realities at a deeper, kind of richer, more empathetic level. And then really importantly, being able to turn those insights into new solutions and products and services that truly delight and amaze customers. And I want to share with you today 3 best practices about how you can get to the point where you can develop those deeper kinds of customer insights. Before we do that, though, I wanted to just share with you, Sebastian, am I still sharing my screen? It looks like it's gone away. Oh, there it is. Perfect. I hope you can see this. This is a process that we use within a class called Startup Garage, where we teach students the process of evaluating a new venture opportunity. And you can see we always have on the left there, we always ask students to start with exploring and immersing themselves in customer insight, because we have a belief that that's a great place to start on your entrepreneurial journey. If not the very first step, it should be one of the first 2 or 3 steps you take. Then before I get to, we're stuck here. All right, that worked. Before I get to the 3 best practices, I want to just talk for a minute about pain points. Why am I focusing on pain points? It sounds a little negative, perhaps, but the reason is those pain points are the incentive for somebody to actually try your product for the first time, to be willing to make any sort of changes, to begin to actually use your product, and hopefully to eventually be ready to pay for the product and encourage other people to try it as well. And it's super hard to change customer behavior. So if you find a pain point, something where the customer is frustrated and it's not working, you will make your lives as entrepreneurs so much easier. So here are the 3 best practices I want to talk through. The first is interviewing. That should probably sound super familiar, but we'll talk about some of the ways that you make interviewing work really well for you. The second is a kind of research that I call follow me home research. Some people call it ethnographic research. And the last is taking everything you've learned from all your customer interviews and follow me home exercises and turning it into a point of view about the customer and the need that you can really help to solve. So let's talk interviews first. This is the place most people start and really think of when they think about building customer insight. And that's a good thing, because interviews are pretty easy to do, maybe a little easier before COVID, but they're easy to do, and they're really useful. But to do interviews well, there are a couple of techniques that can help you begin to peel the onion and understand your customer and what their needs and motivations are at a deeper level. Let me share with you some of those. The first thing I would recommend is not to start with the solution you've already been kind of noodling in your head. You almost certainly already have something you think is a good answer for the customer, but don't start there. Start by understanding what they're doing today. Let's say, for example, you have a new product idea that will make it safer for people to bicycle in big cities. That's a great thing. But when you go out to do your customer insight interviews, don't show up and start telling them about your great idea. Do something different. Go and understand what they're doing today. Have them tell you about the last time that they went biking in their city. What was that experience like for them? What was great about it? What did they enjoy? What was frustrating or nervous making, or what were the downsides of that experience? And as you're asking these questions, make sure you ban the word usually from your vocabulary. What you want to do instead is you want to ask them to tell you about very specific times. Tell me about the last time you went biking in your city. And then later, tell me about the time before that. Tell me about the most wonderful time you were biking in a city, or the most worrisome time that you went biking in the city. Ask them for specifics, because that's going to be an opportunity for them to remember the very specific details associated with that event, and you're going to get richer, more accurate customer insight than if you're asking generalized questions. Always ask your questions in an open-ended manner. You heard me say things like, tell me about, or I'm curious about, or even tell me a story about the time. Those kind of questions really encourage people to tell you more and to dive in deeper. And then once you've gotten the sort of first answer to your question, be sure to always follow up, not always, but a lot of times, follow up with why, and sometimes why again. Those why questions are beautiful for helping you understand what are the motivations behind what the customers are doing, what are the emotions that drive them to take the actions that they're taking. So why is really a great friend to you when you're doing these interviews. And then once you've got your lovely open-ended questions out there and your why questions out there, make sure you stop and pause and just wait for them to answer. You'd be surprised how easy it is in an interview to sort of just get chugging along and keep talking. You gotta stop and give them lots of time to answer. And a super great trick is, even when you think that they've finished answering the question, pause again. Some of the richest insights I've seen come out of interviews is in that moment where you think they're done talking, they maybe even think they're done talking, but you wait and they remember something else, or they go in and tell you something a little bit deeper. So take those pauses. Encourage them to tell you stories. If you say to somebody, tell me a story about the last time or the most frightening time you were biking in a city, you're going to get a more interesting, richer way of having them talk to you, because people they're primed to think that telling a story is supposed to have more of the detail, more of the nuance, and that's what you want from your interview. You want the detail and the nuance. On the simple logistics side, go in pairs. I would say go in pairs at least. When I was in product management for many years, we'd often bring 3 or 4 people from the team to an interview because it's so valuable for every person on your team to have the opportunity to hear the customer personally, not to only hear the recap from somebody who got to do the interview. But at least go in pairs. This lets one person do the interview with the customer, maintain the eye contact, build the rapport, keep the conversation moving naturally, while the other person makes sure the recording's working, takes notes in case, God forbid, the recorder doesn't work, and keep track of questions that you want to be sure you don't forget, and sort of nudge the interviewer to make sure those questions don't get lost in the mix. And finally, one of the most important things is look for the workarounds. Look for the people, some people call them power users, who have been so frustrated by what they're using today that they have come up with their own kind of Rube Goldberg-y sort of crazy solution to make the situation better. So in the situation of biking in cities, I saw a person once who was riding their bike around with these kind of rods sticking out from each wheel. And it was just a big message to the cars, like, keep your distance, man, I need more space. Those workarounds, those Rube Goldberg solution folks are gold to you as an entrepreneur. Because first of all, you know that's a place where the frustration was big enough that the person actually took some action. And secondly, you're already starting to see what solutions might make some sense. So let those workarounds be your friend. So the next kind of research I want to talk about is called Follow Me Home. Follow Me Home research is something where you follow the customer wherever they're doing what it is you want to know about. If you want to help people make a better fishing pole, then you follow them to the store where they're buying fishing poles and you follow them to the lake when they're fishing. If you want to help people pay their bills faster, you follow them home and you watch them pay their bills. If you want to help them make better employee resumes, do better employee reviews, then you follow them to the office and you watch while they're working with employee reviews. The last one's tricky to pull off, but it's possible sometimes. So that's the idea, is rather than asking people what they do, you're actually watching what they do. So people often say to me, oh my God, isn't that super uncomfortable? Well, luckily it's not quite as uncomfortable as this picture that you see here. But yes, it can be uncomfortable. And so you have to start with some softball questions, sort of ways to help people feel more comfortable. If they offer you a drink or something in their home, always say yes. That creates a little bit of rapport. So you have to build that comfort. But probably the most important thing to make this technique work for you is that you want to encourage the user, the customer, to narrate what's going on in their head while you're watching them. And you set that expectation with them. You say, I'm going to watch. I'm not going to say very much at all, What I'm going to ask you to do is talk me through what you're doing and what's going through your head while you're doing it. So IDEO has sort of IDEO, the design firm, has sort of a famous story about helping clients find a way to deliver a better fishing pole for kids. And they went and watched parents in the store trying to figure out what to buy. And they asked the parents to tell them, what are you thinking as you're looking at all this stuff? I got to get the fishing pole, but then I guess I'm supposed to get some hooks and maybe some bait. And what they discovered as they got the parents to talk about what was going through their minds is that the parents were kind of nervous. They didn't really know that much about fishing. They wanted to create this great experience for their kids, but they didn't know what to buy. And so in the end, what they gave the client wasn't just a recommendation for a new fishing pole. They recommended that the client produce a whole solution, a fishing pole and everything you need to just buy one thing off the shelf and take your kid fishing. That kind of insight comes from watching what people are really doing, recognizing when they're looking confused in the store and asking them to tell you about what's creating that confusion. So I think what you'll find if you try it, you may be shocked at how much more you learn from watching what people actually do, in addition to just asking them to tell you what they do in the interviews. All right, last best practice, point of view. Once you've been out interviewing your customers and doing your follow me home research, make sure that you take time as a team to come back together and pause and reflect and really refine your thinking about what you've learned. And I encourage you to think about taking that learning and crafting it into what we call a point of view, which is super simple. It's just a statement about the specific user and the pain point that you're going to solve, but both parts of that statement should be informed by what you've learned through your interviews, the unique insights that you've developed through your interviews. Here's one example of a point of view statement. Jason, an overworked manager, needs a way to stay more connected with his newly remote working team. Let's just say that point of view might have occurred to me as someone who is working with a newly remote working team. Another one that comes from the corona reality right now. Sabine, a busy cash-strapped restaurant owner, needs a way to enable social distancing for customers and employees while still turning a profit. And you'll see there that the nuances of it's the fact that she's cash-strapped and she's super busy, but she's still got to figure out how to turn a profit in this new situation that helps to refine and highlight the important insights versus the multitude of insights that you got during your interviews. All right, it turns out there are some really great specific activities you can go through as a team to refine yourself down to a great point of view statement. In 12 minutes, we're not going to have time to go over those. So I offer you this URL. This will take you to a page on the Stanford Design School. D School means Design School at Stanford, that you can download, and it'll talk you through a series of activities that you can go through that'll help you refine your point of view. Highly encourage you to take a look at it. There's no charge, it's just a PDF you can download and use. So those are my 3 best practices. Learning to do interviews in a way that lets you unpeel the onion, doing follow me home research so you're watching what your customers do, not just hearing them tell you what they do, and then really pausing after you've gathered all your data to refine your thinking and clarify who's the customer you're solving a problem for and what are you going to be able to do to create a solution for them that is going to make their lives better. My hope is that you will be able to use some of this thinking as you're talking to your own customers and building the solutions you want to be creating for people to make their lives better. That's all I have to say, and I would be delighted to take questions if that is helpful.
Thank you for your interesting speech. We do have some questions from our participants. I just start with one question. Don't you see some security issues with this kind of observations of the customers?
Yeah, I assume by security issues, you mean how do you make sure you keep your team safe if you're going into people's homes or even their places of business? Yes, absolutely. And we do it in a couple ways. It's part of the reason you would never go do a follow me home visit by yourself. You'd have multiple people there. Again, we usually take 3 or 4 people from a team. So you've got multiple people there and you do some pre-vetting of people, right? You get them on the phone, you do a little interviewing, you make sure that you feel comfortable talking to them. So yeah, you do have to be very thoughtful about security. Sending one person alone would be a terrible, terrible idea.
Yeah, makes sense. So, and another question, the last question. Do you have any startups, or are you just helping others?
Not quite sure I followed that one. Tell me again.
The question was, do you have any startups, or are you just helping other startups to rise?
Oh, do I have startups? I no longer have a startup. I have had the good fortune to work as an early stage employee at a startup that went public, to be one of the leadership team on an early stage startup that was acquired by a large company. And then I did have a stint of running my own startup for about 4 years. That one failed. So I have experienced all three of the possible outcomes of startups: going public, being acquired, and failing. But at this point, no, my full-time job at this point is trying to help create great educational experiences for those of you who are ready to start your own entrepreneurial careers.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here.
Delighted to.
And hope we see each other in the future, or hear from each other in the future.
Thanks, Sebastian. Really appreciate it.
Good. Goodbye.
Bye now.